we're going to be taking a look at some of the most horrifying and unsettling FNAF fan games ever made. From terrifying creature designs to moments that genuinely catch you completely off guard, these games are absolute nightmare fuel. Some of these fan games are so creepy they make the original series look tame, so let's jump right into them. The lore of Five Nights at Freddy's fan games, something I'm typically not interested in. However, occasionally a fan game will come around that actually catches my attention, and the game we'll be covering today is one of those games. However, I actually didn't care about the story at all until I got to the third game. That's right, the game we'll be talking about today is a big one. 3 games in total to go over, and I promise there will be plenty of salt along the way. Join me today as we dive into the ups and downs of Five Nights at Maggie's. Maggie's doesn't throw us into a story right away, instead just starting how the original FNAF begins, with a newspaper of a job notice for a security guard. We take the job, not knowing who our character is, and jump right into the first night, where we can already talk about a game mechanic choice that I can't quite wrap my head around. First, let's talk about the office. It's so incredibly simple that it is somehow more basic than the Five Nights at Freddy's 1 office. You have 2 directions you can turn. One direction has the cameras, and the other side has a single door. Now let's talk about the mechanic that makes me question what the developer was thinking. How do you think the camera system operates? Maybe a camera map with buttons, maybe using the arrow keys to surf through the cameras? All wrong. You have to use the number keys on your keyboard. I have to use the number keys? Really? That's awful. I actually have to use, I can't touch the buttons with my mouse. Let me tell you why this is so awkward. Because of your flashlight. Your flashlight is used to flash the doorway behind you and the vent underneath your desk. Your flashlight is controlled by your control key, and of course, because it's a FNAF game, you have to use your mouse for everything. So you have one hand to use 8 of your number keys and the control key. This leads to an overall awkward controlling experience, but that could just be a nitpick. It was just the first thing I noticed. Now, to talk about the characters that Night 1 introduces. Let's start with the main character herself, Maggie. Maggie is as basic as you can get in this game. Spoiler alert, all of these characters are basic. Maggie will move around the cameras and eventually make her way to your door. When she's there, all you have to do is hold the door closed until you hear her leave. This is where you'll notice something interesting about this game. There is no power system in this game. And if you think that it will be balanced somewhere else so that this generosity isn't easily abused, you would be wrong. You can hold the door closed the entire night. But we'll talk about the strategy of this game a bit later. The next character introduced on this night is Lola. Lola does the exact same thing as Maggie in the exact same way. You got an hourglass going. Lola is the best. In bed? What is wrong with me? She even goes through the exact same cameras and is also dealt with by using the doors. Something you'll notice about later nights is that Maggie or Lola is pretty much consistently in your hallway at all times, leading to you needing to hold the door closed pretty much the entire night, forcing you to look at this stupid fucking John McAdam in the fucking eyes. The final character introduced on Night 1 is Chanchy, the fat-ass pig, aka your mom. Chanchy has a random chance to appear on any camera whenever you switch to one, acting exactly as Phantom Chica. If you look at him for too long, he will fuck your shit up like my buddy fucks up grilled cheese sandwiches. And let me tell you, that guy eats the shit out of grilled cheese sandwiches. However, once we talk about the ultimate strategy a bit later, you'll quickly learn how Chanchy will pretty much never be a problem. Overall, if you know how to use your noggin a little bit, you may notice that all 3 of these characters can be dealt with by just holding the door closed the entire night and never doing anything. Hold your left click down, take a nap for 6 minutes, and then we'll start talking about Night 2. Night 2 introduces the final 2 characters this game has to offer. That's right, guys. It's about to get crazy. Not really, but let's talk about these 2 new assholes. Let's begin with Hank. Hank will try to enter the vent underneath your desk. Once he's there, he'll make a sound cue. Simply look under your desk and flash him with your light and he'll go away. However, there is a chance he will stay in the vent instead of going back to the stage, except the side effect is he will still make a sound cue when you have to flash him again, so this really isn't as scary as it sounds. Flower is the other character added on this night. And guys, come in real close for me. Would you believe me if I told you Flower was exactly the same as Hank? Well, guess what? She is. Quite literally the exact same mechanic. So nothing too much you'll have to worry about. There you go. That's every character in the game. Just kidding. I actually lied to you. There is one final character we have to talk about, except here's the thing. I don't know its name. I think it's Guppy, but that could be entirely wrong. Guppy appears on the cameras in Camera 3. Guppy acts as this game's Foxy. You will have to watch him on the cameras to prevent him from moving. If he gets up and leaves, guess what? Dead. Ass souffle. However, since every main night after this one doesn't add anything new, it's time we talk about this game's disgustingly broken strategy. So, stay focused because it's super complicated. Basically, once the night starts, instantly turn to camera 3 to stall Guppy. Then turn around and hold the door closed, even if nobody is there. If at any point you hear a vent noise, quickly turn around and flash the vent, then turn back around and hold the door closed again. There you go. You've just beat the game. This strategy successfully stalls Guppy, ignores Chanchy since you're never switching cameras, keeping the doors closed long enough that nobody will ever get in, and will handle the vent animatronics more than adequately. Nights 2, 3, 4, and 5 can all be handled using this strategy. This is by far this game's biggest downside. It is so easy that it's boring. The majority of this game is spent staring at this stupid fucker's face. I hate this guy's fucking smile. Look at this piece of shit. Ugly ass, fuck ass boy. John McAdams. More like John McFat-ums. Huh. Am I right or am I right? Yeah, I'm right, I know. You guys can laugh. No, you can laugh, it's okay. It's okay, I know I'm funny, it's okay. Now, you might have noticed I mentioned that strategy only works up to night 5, and that's because I lied again. There's another character we have to talk about that's integrated on night 6. I don't know his actual name, and fuck you, I'm just gonna call him Porky since that's what I called him in my playthrough, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black. Porky Pig acts as this game's final boss character. Night 6 is impossible. Kind of. Porky Pig can attack both your door and your vent. He also moves at the speed of fucking sound. He will go from your door to your vent in the span of 2 seconds. Now, here's where it gets impossible, and the funny story that goes along with this. So, here's the hilarious extra mechanic with Porky. He can actually be at your door and in your vent at the exact same time. If he's at your door and you close it, you will hear him in your vent. Not there's a chance. No, you will hear him attack your vent. So you might think you should flash him in the vent. So you go to turn around. But the moment you let go of your door, you get fucked. What the fuck, dude? What the fuck is that? I hear the vent noise. I did not hear noise hearing him enter the hall. He's in the hall. If I open the fucking door, it doesn't matter where he is in the hall, he just fucking kills me. Since once again, he will be in both places at the same time. Dxtr, that doesn't sound very fun at all. Well, listen to this. Apparently, I played a version of the game where Night 6 was broken, as I received a comment from the game's developer telling me so. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. So what actually happens if you beat Night 6? We get one final newspaper article explaining that the owner of Maggie's, Robert Madden, was found dead in his office from a shot to the head. Of course, since we were the only ones left in the building, we are the main and only suspect. We also learn in this newspaper that our name is Stephen Cadell. The article finishes off by informing the public that the pizzeria's new owner will be Robert's son, who isn't named. Now, I don't know about you guys, but this seems like the perfect murder for a son who really wants to take over his father's restaurant. I'm not throwing any fingers, but I'm just saying, I wouldn't be surprised if that's what this ends up being. Now, you may think I got through this game really quickly, and that's because I did. Five Nights at Maggie's 1 is an incredibly easy and boring game. However, it does pave the way for the super interesting story that the rest of the series tells. So if you can get over that, then we can talk about Five Nights at Maggie's 2. And I promise, these games are only going to get more and more interesting. Let's dive down the rabbit hole. Five Nights at Maggie's 2 is significantly more interesting than the first game in terms of actual gameplay. To start, there are more than 2 things to look at. This time, on your desk, you have your cameras and a vent. To your left, you have a big hallway, and to your right, you have Guppy sitting dead as fuck in the corner. Want to hear something really great? The cameras in this game also have vent cams. Isn't that just awesome? Just kidding, I know it isn't. In terms of new characters, there really aren't any, just the returning characters from the first game, except this time, they're all withered. Night 1 introduces 3 threats. Let's start with the most basic of the bunch, that being Maggie herself. Maggie will wander around the cameras in an attempt to get to you through the hallway on your left. Once she enters your hallway, she will make a sound cue letting you know that she is there. When she is, you will have to turn to the hallway, pull up your shock button, and shock the hallway to make her piss off. Except you want to hear something really funny? Maggie has the chance to not leave the hallway when you flash her. Why? Because fuck you, I guess. I really dislike blatant RNG mechanics like this in games. It's the same reason why I hate Five Nights at Freddy's 3 and its bullshit 1 in 7 dick that it pulls. So maybe you don't want to have to deal with the chance of that RNG AIDS. Can you stop Maggie from reaching your hallway? Well, yes, actually you can. Inside of the cameras, you will find a play sound button, which, as the name suggests, will emit a sound on whichever camera you use it on. Maggie does not like this sound, so if you use it on the camera she's on, she will move backwards. Except I actually just lied to you. Remember how I said this was a way to avoid the stupid fucking RNG that Maggie pulls at the door? Well, guess what, fucker? That's right, she pulls the same RNG bullshit in the cameras too, except somehow it's even worse. Maggie has a chance to move forward a camera instead of backwards a camera when the sound button is used, actually making her progress to your hallway even faster. Isn't that just what you want? Hey, I just fucking sounded you, asshole. Don't act like I wasn't on top of that shit. So the way to deal with Maggie comes down to just completely ignoring her in the cameras and letting her attack your hallway, since you're going to have to deal with the RNG regardless. You might as well just put your focus somewhere else and only focus on her when you hear her in the hall. The second character Night 1 introduces is Chanchy. Wanna guess what he does? If you said the exact same thing as Maggie, you'd be absolutely right. And the best part? He also has the chance to be a complete dickhead and ignore everything all the time. Wanna shock him out of your hall? Well, maybe he's feeling like keeping his fat ass right there. Wanna prevent him from parking his fat ass right there with the sound button? Well, maybe he's feeling like getting to your hallway even faster. Fuck it. Okay, fine. So another character that's better off being ignored until an attack. That's not so bad. What about the final threat, Dxtr? Is that one any different? Yes, actually. The final threat introduced on Night 1 is Guppy. I fucking hate Guppy so much it isn't even funny. If you remember, Guppy is in the office with you to your right. Throughout the night, Guppy will try to... how do I say this? Slide his fingers down your crack? Hey, back the fuck up. Back the fuck up, Miss Missy. I tabbed out of the fucking game. The way you stop him is simple. Occasionally check on him and flash your flashlight at him to make him move backwards. The reason why I hate him so much, he makes no noise whatsoever. Not a single peep from this motherfucker right here, and he moves fast, especially on later nights. This guy is so fast, it's infuriating, and because he makes no noise, he's even easier to forget about. I hate him, he is buns, hot ass, shitty robot. But overall, Night 1 isn't too bad. So let's move on to Night 2, which introduces 3 new threats: Hank, Flower, and Lola. Let's start with Hank and Flower since they both do the exact same thing. These two take advantage of your vents, crawling through them to attack you via the giant vent directly in front of you. If you see them in the vents, you can close whichever vent they're in. When you do, they too can choose to RNG fuck your ass instead of cooperating. The ideal situation will have them go back to the stage, but in all likelihood, it's much more common for them to go, nuh-uh, and just move to another fucking vent. Isn't that just so awesome? What's the point of even closing the fucking vent if they're just gonna phase through it? Fuck it, I don't care. Here's something really sick about these guys. Once they enter the big vent, that doesn't mean you lose. If they get to the vent in front of you, if you just stare at them for a few seconds, they will go back to the stage. So this brings up another flaw in this game's design. Using the close vent door button is completely useless against these two, because you can deal with them so much more easily by just allowing them to attack and looking at them. So why even bother checking the vent cams for them at all? Well, whatever. What about Lola? What could she do? Well, she acts as a Phantom Chica type of character. She will appear on the cameras randomly. If you stare at her for too long, she will pile drive towards your office through your vents to attempt to kill you. However, you may have noticed a slight flaw. We've already established that there is no need to check the cameras whatsoever. Maggie and Chansey are easily dealt with by letting them attack the hallway, and Hank and Flower are easily dealt with by letting them attack your vent. So is Lola ever a problem? No, and even if she was, when she gets to the vent in front of you, if you just literally look in any direction that isn't directly at her, she will go back to the stage. So again, yet another character that doesn't even need to be worried about. If she's in your vent, just don't look for a few seconds. Sure, she will also disable your cameras for a little bit when she attacks, but we've already established your cameras are pretty much a fucking rock, so that really doesn't matter. Something interesting about Maggie's games is that they don't have any post-night bullshit nobody cares about. So we can just get right into night 2, where we can talk about the first legitimate threat of a character, Porky Pig. Remember him? Yeah? The guy that made my version of Maggie's One Impossible? Which, by the way, I found out in this game, his name is actually Surdy. Needless to say, I already had some pretty bad blood with this guy. But how bad could he really be, right? Very. Let me just tell you, he can be very bad. Surdy can take the approach of every character we've seen so far except Guppy. He can attack both your hallways and your vents. Fuck the hallway attack, it's dealt with in the same way as Maggie and Chansey, and yes, also has the same bullshit RNG, so does his camera movements. What we really want to talk about is Surdy in the vents, because that's where he becomes a bitch. When Surdy is in the vents, you need to be in full-blown panic mode. Oh god. Oh god, oh god, oh god. Even the game knows how much of a problem Surdy in your vent is, because it literally gives you a fucking warning on your cameras letting you know exactly which camera he's in. Obviously, if there's not a brain in your head, you have to close the vent until he goes away. And now's the time I should mention how these vent doors actually work, and why they make me want to shove a pencil down my urethra and snap it in half. Since there is no power in this game, there obviously has to be some nerf to these doors, but the nerf chosen just makes me piss blood. But that also might be from the pencil, I'm not sure. If at any point you pull down the cameras, the door will open. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. What really makes me want to die is that the door will open even if you switch cameras. So when a door is closed, you're locked in looking at it until whatever is inside leaves. And let me tell you about that. These fat motherfuckers don't move a goddamn inch! Literally, these fuckers will sit there in those vents with the doors closed for what feels like a fucking eternity. And on later nights when Guppy turns into a fucking track star, it makes it really easy to clench your legs so hard and your testicles shatter into 32 small ass pieces. Fuck me in my ass. I was literally turning to you. Literally was turning to you. I got stuck. I was fucked, dude. I was fucking everything had to be fixed. The sound had to be fixed. The fucking vents had to be fixed. My dick had to be fixed. Fixed as fuck. Because you can't just stare at him in the vent to make him piss off like you can with the other vent characters, if he gets to you, your onion rings. Completely Jover. But surely this game can't get any more bullshit, right? Surdy was the last character introduced from the first game, and Dxtr already said that there wasn't any new characters, and Dxtr wouldn't lie to me. He's a YouTuber, and a YouTuber has never lied before, right? Hate to break it to you, Buster. I lied. Night 4 introduces Jerry, the blue fucker. Who the fuck is Jerry? Well, let me tell you about Jerry. Have you ever thought to yourself, golly gee, one Surdy is already a headache to deal with. If only I could add another one. Well, if so, then you're in luck. Did you like one fucking Surdy in your ass? Why not two? Because that's exactly what Jerry is. Surdy 2.0. Except there's one key detail that doesn't really matter, but does just show Jerry was supposed to be the most AIDS character of all time. He's not even affected by the sound button, period. So there's quite literally no way to stop him. And he is fast, like really fucking fast. If he gets to your hallway and decides to bullshit RNG you, guess what, fucker? Game over, because by the time your shock recharges, you'll be dead. But in all honesty, that's not even the worst part. The worst part is without a doubt the fucking Tyson gay guppy over there in the corner. You piece of fucking shit! This motherfucker is so goddamn cocksucking fast it hardly seems fair! Everyone in Night 5 is so fucking fast they will be sharding in your eyes from the moment you start the night. But the only place they aren't fast? The fucking vents that you can't look away from lest the doors open wide, allowing for any cold metallic robot to penetrate me in the ass and rupture my colon! Fuck! Fuck! Not to mention that Night 5 is so fucking loud, you won't be able to focus on the sound cues whatsoever. I gave up on Night 5. I don't care. This night was bullshit. This game was bullshit. Butt plug. Heart attack inducing fuck. So no, I didn't beat it. I'm not going to beat it. I'll beat my dick, but let's pretend like I did beat it. What happens then? Well, you get given Night 6. Which is even fucking harder. Just a full-blown ass pounding with you as the main victim. I'm glad I didn't make it this far. I'm glad I chose to piss off when I did, because the rate at which all of my teeth would have been plucked out of my skull would have been astronomical had I forced myself through this AIDS. What about beating Night 6? Has anything amazing happened? No, not really. And that's the most upsetting part. We get a final newspaper clipping explaining that the building we were in burned down for an unknown reason. The only suspect is, of course, once again us, since we were the only ones in the building at the time. We also learn that everything was salvaged in the fire and will be used for a new attraction later down the line. So that would lead you to think, how shitty was that fire that everything was salvaged? Must have been a pretty piss poor fire. Perchance a fire started by a person? Very interesting thought, dear viewer. Let's keep our theory heads turning and move on to the next game. But wait, Dxtr, what about that text that says fake ending in the corner? Well, to be honest with you, I have no idea why that's there. I've been unable to find any evidence of another ending existing in this game, and my only thought is that the third game is meant to serve as the actual true ending. Not only to the story, but to my suffering, because I actually really liked the third game, and I think you will too. So please, let's stop talking about this fucking slop and move on to something a lot more appealing in Five Nights at Maggie's 3. Five Nights at Maggie's 3 is nothing short of a masterpiece, truly a stark contrast from the two games we've touched on so far. I was honestly incredibly surprised by the amazing step up in quality that this game brought to the table, not only in terms of story, but also in terms of graphics, and most importantly to me, game mechanics. To start, Maggie's 3 opens to a repair minigame. We're tasked with charging up Maggie. We have to open up her chest, snip some wires, and charge them up. Seems simple enough. You'll notice during this minigame that you're able to turn around to see a dark void of a room behind you that you can flash with your light. But you'll also find that nothing is ever there. After charging up Maggie, we're shown 7 rectangles. One of them fizzles out, symbolizing what I can only assume to be the souls of some dead children, even though child murder hasn't even been mentioned in this series so far. But we're not done yet. We're tossed into a minigame directly after this. A man covered in blood walks into a room, explains he needs to hide again, saying he's trapped here and he won't go anywhere. Not knowing who he is, we're thrown into Night 1. Night 1 actually only introduces one threat, that being Lolo, a new character. But before we can start talking about characters, we need to talk about this office and the tools at our disposal. We have 2 doors. Finally, something we can be familiar with. These work the exact way you'd expect them to, so nothing weird there. Of course, we have our cameras, but you might notice something a little bit different about them. There are 3 menus to surf through on your monitor, and only one of them are your typical cameras. The other menus are your main vent and your breakers. The main vent allows you to look at and shine the main vent, and the breakers allow you to remotely turn off the power to the entire building and specific cameras. But we'll talk about why those are important later. The final interesting mechanic is the vent door button on one of your cameras, but that will become important once we talk about 2 certain rascals later in this video. For now, we have to talk about Lolo. Lolo is as simple as a character can get. He is this game's Bonnie. He will move through the cameras and approach your right door. When he's there, simply close the door until you hear him leave, and bada bing bada boom, that cycle will repeat. Again, it's night 1, I don't think you expected anything crazy. Now we can talk about the post-night 2 repair minigame. This time having to repair Bob. Side note, every character in this game aside from 2 are brand new. Same formula as the last minigame, except this time there's actually something in that darkness behind you. Surdy. But this time, it's just his endoskeleton. No mom skin. Your mom specifically. Get it? Because she's a pig? Oink. He will slowly try to creep up on you to kill you. Whenever you hear him, simply turn around and hold your light on him to make him go back. He's very slow these first few nights, but trust me, these minigames can get a little out of control on later nights. After completing the minigame, another rectangle fades away and we get another 8-bit cutscene. This time we see 2 men. One of them goes to make coffee while the other sits to read the newspaper. He begins to read about a serial killer dubbed the Frankenstein. Hearing that name makes the man at the counter freeze. He knows something. After 8 years of silence, the serial killer has re-emerged, taking the life of a 16-year-old boy. The body was found in the John McAdams warehouse, the same building that Five Nights at Maggie's 2 took place in. The man reading the newspaper, named Steve, mentions he thought John himself was the killer, but thinks that it could maybe be his son Henry, who had apparently been missing. He mentions Henry killed someone, but before he can get out exactly who he killed, the man at the counter, named Aaron, asks him to leave. After Steve leaves, Aaron goes over to the table to look at the newspaper, mentioning how he didn't stop and that this isn't over, not mentioning who he actually is. And with that, we go right into Night 2. Night 2 introduces 4 new animatronics. However, it's actually really only 3, and I will obviously be explaining why, since I'd be a pretty shitty reviewer if I didn't. To start, let's talk about Rolf. A very stupid name, by the way. Rolling on the floor laughing ass animatronic. Damn, he got a dick on him though, look at that! Rolf is the first character to take advantage of your main vent camera. You will be able to hear him enter it. Thank God for sound cues, they're honestly probably my favorite part of FNAF games at this point. When you hear him in the vent, simply go to it and hold your light on him until he goes away. Very simple character with a very simple mechanic, but in my opinion, the simple mechanics are the best mechanics, because it allows for your whole roster to not feel completely unfair while dealing with all of them. The next character introduced is Bob the Pig. He works the exact same way as Lolo, except he attacks your left door instead of your right. Really nothing else super interesting to note for this character, just this game's Chica. The other 2 characters introduced on this night are Esther and Lester. These 2 animatronics always stay together, which is why I say they're really just one animatronic. They take advantage of the other vent that you can't see on camera 7. Once again, they make a sound cue when they're trying to enter the cam 7 vent. All you have to do is close the vent on that camera and they will quickly go back to their stage. Again, incredibly easy characters to deal with, but from my personal experience, were the easiest to miss. Night 2's post-night repair minigame has us fixing up Lolo. Nothing special. But I do want to talk about the cutscene that Night 2 brings. 2 siblings named Henry and Stacy stop outside of a Maggie's location. Yes, this is the Henry that was mentioned in last night's cutscene. They had a conversation about their mom who died after Stacy was born. It's revealed that their dad works a lot, but we're not told what. It's also hinted that their dad doesn't love Henry in the same way that he loves Stacy. Night 3 introduces the first real, honest threat I think this game has. That being this funny looking green fellow. You want to take a guess at what his name is? If you said Chomper, you'd be completely fucking wrong because his name is Cracky. Excuse me? Cracky? What a fucked up name. I don't actually know literally any of these characters' names. I know Maggie and I guess Bob now. I'm gonna guess this is Crackle. Fucking on Crackle. I know, I'm hilarious. What can I say? This is what I do for a living. I play Five Nights at Freddy's for a living. For a job. This is my job. Isn't that weird? That's fucking weird. But whatever. Why do I feel this guy is actually a threat? Well, that's because he is this game's first integration of a watch me on the camera mechanic. A mechanic that, if you're familiar with my channel, you know I'm not a huge fan of. You cannot allow Cracky to leave the stage or you will be split open like a double wide surprise. That is fucked, by the way. This looks so fucked. Obviously, all you have to do is stare him down on the cameras, which is not very challenging. But because of a certain character we'll talk about later, Cracky will very quickly become a big problem that you will probably forget about. I want to use this time to talk about the power situation in this game. Being the first in the series to actually use power, I was a bit nervous this would be another SCP endurance case where you have absolutely no power throughout the entire game. But to my surprise, it was actually the complete opposite. You actually have a ridiculous amount of power in this game. So much so that for the first few nights, I had the cameras up the entire night, while also closing the Cam 7 vent the entire time as well, and still completed the night with a decent amount of power remaining. You do not have to think about power conservation in this game, which I really appreciate. Night 3's post-night repair minigame has us repair Cracky, and it's on this night that Surdy really starts to get quick. So this is probably the point of these segments where they will start to take a long time to complete. The cutscene that plays after this segment is one of the most disturbing I've seen since Five Nights at Candy's 3. Stacy and her dad are in the dark talking to one another. Stacy mentions how scared she is. Her dad gives her a sleeping pill, explaining that after she wakes up, she'll feel better than she ever has before in a brand new body. After Stacy falls asleep, a shock lights up the room, revealing that Stacy had been electrocuted to death. Attempting to cement her soul inside of one of the machines, his experiment fails, and he's left to cry alone inside of the room with his daughter's corpse. This is easily one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen come out of a FNAF game. Not because of what we directly see, but because of the idea of what John did to his own flesh and blood. Five Nights at Maggie shows proof that you can tell stories about incredibly horrendous things in an interesting and not overtly edgy way. With all of the shortcomings I feel this game series has, I can easily say that the story is not one of them. Moving on to Night 4, we're introduced to the two final characters this game has to offer, Maggie and of course, Surdy. Let's start with Maggie since she's simple. She works in the exact same way that Rolf does. She attacks through your main vent. All you need to do is hold the flashlight on her and she'll go away. Now we can talk about the big bastard himself, Surdy, who once again, in this game is just an endoskeleton. This guy right here is this game's big challenger. Surdy makes use of your breakers. Occasionally, he will appear on any camera in the building. When he does, he will emit a loud sound. You will have to shut off the breaker to the room he's in, which will deactivate him. This is not difficult. What is difficult is when Surdy is paired with Cracky. With how frequently Surdy will attack, Cracky will very easily be able to get several movement opportunities in on you, leading to you needing to stare at him for longer while the rest of the cast does all of their bullshit. But once again, because of how simple everyone's mechanics are, it serves to make this game tense, but not overtly difficult. Don't get me wrong, I think it's great that max modes exist, and that people are pushing the limits of what's possible with Five Nights at Freddy's games. But not every game needs to be the most difficult thing on planet Earth. Some games just really want to tell a story, and I can appreciate this game for doing so. After beating Night 4, we repair Rolf, and of course get a new cutscene. Henry, now with the alias Stephen Cadell, which if you remember is the name of the player we played as in the first Maggie's, walks into the CEO of Maggie's office with a gun. The CEO, if you remember, named Robert Madden. He reveals he knew that his real name was Henry, reveals that he knows what Henry did, and admits he still never fired him for fear of tarnishing the brand for hiring a fugitive. I'll dive into exactly what Henry did when I talk about the lore later in this video. Henry demands to get his father's experiment files, and when Robert refuses, Henry shoots him in the head. This is the situation that was mentioned at the end of Five Nights at Maggie's 1. Night 5 introduces nothing new, just being a harder version of Night 4. After completing it, you fix both Esther and Lester, and of course, we get another cutscene, which is also pretty disturbing in nature. John McAdams, expecting to see his son home by 11, is still working on his project. Henry, his son, walks in at 12 completely plastered. Henry begins to gaslight his father for not caring about his own children and claims that he's responsible for killing Jason, a brother that up until this point we hadn't heard of. John reveals that he used his animatronics to revive his children from the dead because he loved them. Henry, not knowing any of this had been taking place up until this point, is obviously incredibly upset. Henry ends up killing his father in a fit of rage, and John McAdams' soul is accidentally revived in the animatronic of Surdy. That's right, the final boss of the first 2 Maggie's games was Henry's dad. So now we have to question, why would his dad be trying to kill him? Once again, Night 6 adds nothing new, just being more difficult than the last. The repair minigame, however, is different. There are no more characters to repair. The only character who remains is Surdy. You must wait for him to appear behind you and shock him. After shocking Surdy, we get something I never expected when I first started playing these games. We get an amazing monologue right up there with the Henry speech from Pizzeria Simulator. I don't want to explain it to you, I'd rather you listen to it. But before I show you it, I think it's time I finally dive into the lore of this game. Our story begins on May 25th, 1975. John McAdams, founder of John McAdams Entertainment, discovers what he believes to be immortality. He hides his experiments behind his company, using the animatronics as a cover for something much more horrifying: the merging of human life with machines. And what better way to test that theory than on your own son? Jason McAdams, age 3, becomes John's first experiment. On June 3rd, 1978, the experiment works. Jason's body moves again, but not like a human. He's primitive, lifeless, hollow. John calls him a success, a prototype, the first step towards eternal life. But it's not enough. John continues his work, kidnapping orphans, experimenting on them, filling his creations with broken souls. The police start investigating, but John's too careful and nothing sticks. Everything he's done stays buried until tragedy strikes his own family. On June 2nd, 1981, John's daughter Stacy is hit by a car after chasing a balloon into the street. She's brought back to her father, barely alive, and John sees another chance. He tries to revive her using the same process that brought Jason back. It fails, and what's left of Stacy dies in his arms. In Five Nights at Maggie's 1, you can actually hear John crying during one of the tapes. That is this moment. A year later, everything falls apart. On August 26, 1982, John's last surviving son, Henry, comes home drunk, furious, covered in stains, and done with his father's bullshit. He accuses John of killing his siblings, of caring more about his machines than his family, and for once, he's right. John tries to justify it, saying he only wanted to bring them back, that he did this because he loved them, but Henry heard enough. He kills his father right then and there, but death doesn't stick in this family, because the next day, John wakes up again inside the Surdy animatronic. His experiment worked, but at the cost of his own humanity. The man who wanted immortality finally got it, but in the most twisted way imaginable. Years pass, and Henry goes into hiding under a new name, Stephen Cadell. On May 3rd, 1985, he takes a job at Maggie's Magical World as a night guard, seemingly just looking for cash. But through old VHS tapes, he learns the horrifying truth. His father is still alive inside Surdy. Henry tracks down Robert Madden, the new CEO of John McAdams Entertainment, and demands his father's research. Robert admits he's known who Henry really is this entire time, but never fired him because it would tarnish the company's image. So Henry does what the McAdams family does best. He kills him. He stands on business. But even that isn't the end. In 1992, a new serial killer surfaces. The media calls him the Frankenstein. Victims are found mutilated, fused with machine parts, and all signs point to one name: John McAdams. Somehow, he's still out there, using the Surdy suit to continue his experiments. Henry, now under yet another alias, Aaron Meyer, realizes his father will never stop, and if he can't destroy him, he has to contain him. But this story isn't just about the McAdams family. Around the same time, another branch of the company is causing problems of its own. Back in 1980, two men were hired to perform as Springlock entertainers at a restaurant called Surdy and Jerry's. They were taught how to use the suits by Daniel Gennaro, the son of the restaurant's founder, Manuel Gennaro. When Manuel died, Daniel took over and rebranded the place into Guppy's Magical World, adding new characters like Cracky and Guppy. Everything was fine until 1988, when both performers suffered Springlock failures live on stage. One jumped off mid-performance, the other tried to save him, and both ended up crushed inside their suits. They die instantly, only to possess the animatronics they performed in. Daniel, being the charming piece of shit he is, mocks their death, saying the only real problem the company would ever have is if kids went missing. And sure enough, soon after, they do. Surdy and Jerry, now possessed, start killing children, souls that would later inhabit Maggie, Lola, and Chanchy in the first two games. Eventually, in 1990, a sister location called Maggie's Magical World opens and the pattern repeats. More kids vanish, and an investigator, our playable character, takes a job trying to uncover the truth. Each night, we explore a different location, finding drawings, blueprints, newspaper clippings, everything pointing towards what's really been happening behind the scenes. By night 4, we find a hidden room behind the show stage. It's filled with evidence and notes from a previous investigator, the same one who went missing. When we report everything to our boss, he fires us, calls us crazy, and closes the case. So we leak the evidence online, the internet takes over, and the investigation reopens, exposing both Maggie's and Guppy's for what they really were. It's later revealed that everything we did, everything we learned, was told to us by Surdy himself. He's old, broken, but aware. A robot reflecting on his past life, telling us how everything fell apart. It's one of the most haunting story choices in any Five Nights at Freddy's game I've ever seen. But it's not just about what happened, it's about who's left to remember it. Decades pass. It's now May 10th, 2021. Henry McAdams returns one final time to the same company that destroyed his family, but this time, he's not there to work. He's there to end everything. Having studied his father's research, Henry manipulates Surdy's systems to lock his father's soul inside of the metal shell permanently. No voice, no movement, no escape. After nearly half a century of murder, obsession, and tragedy, John McAdams is finally forced to face eternity, the very thing he was chasing all along. And that's what makes this story so fascinating. Five Nights at Maggie's isn't just another FNAF clone. It's a full-blown tragedy about legacy, obsession, and consequence. A father chasing immortality, a son chasing redemption, and both of them becoming monsters in the process. It's poetic, it's grim, and for a fan game, it's shockingly well told. John McAdams may have discovered immortality, but in the end, he lost everything that made him human. And Henry, he may have stopped his father, but he had to become just like him to do it. So, before we listen to that final monologue, just remember this. No one in this story found eternal life. They just found eternal suffering. 19 years. 19 years trying to stop you. 19 years studying your findings. Your horrible experiments. The immortality you were seeking all this time. And I did it. I made it work. Let me tell you, I was about to give up, but you made a bad choice to try it one last time. Lester Arias. That death, that was the last straw. That's how I knew that you were not going to stop, not even in that body. I've been studying your blueprints and analyzing your tapes for longer than I can remember.
And let me tell you, you made quite a few mistakes. Yes, you did achieve immortality with full consciousness in your body. But still, your movements were limited. Being sensitive to light, to sound. I thought John McAdams was smarter than that. Don't worry. Your son, the failure, the disgrace to the family, fixed all those problems for you and finally made it work. Or something like that. You see, I didn't want the kids to be in those bodies. They deserved a better life. They deserved a normal childhood. Play with kids their age, go to school, and socialize like normal human beings. You took that away from them a long time ago. They deserved to rest, once and for all. Jason and Stacy, they are resting from the hell you put them through. All of them finally free. But for you, I had a very special plan. I didn't know if I should show all the things you've done to the world. On one hand, it would have brought peace to the people who were still terrified of the dreaded Frankenstein. But I decided to keep your reputation intact. You are still the great John McAdams. To some extent. Most people have forgotten you after the company went under a couple of years ago. I knew that if I brought this to light, your name would make a comeback, and I didn't want to give you the pleasure. That's why I decided to grant you your wish of immortality, but with a little twist. I wanted to make sure you feel the hell that you put Jason, Stacy, and all the other kids through. So, I added a few changes. You won't be able to speak. You won't be able to move. You will have no control over your body. You will still see, feel, and hear everything. You will live for eternity inside that machine with nothing more to do but see how your work, your name, and your wish of being remembered like some kind of god vanishes like the figments of some bad dream. You won't rest. You will suffer for eternity. It's time you pay for your sins, John.
And there you have it. As far as I'm aware, that is everything that Five Nights at Maggie's has to offer. A game series that started off on a sour note for me and ended up becoming one of the most interesting and engaging stories I've ever experienced. I'd highly recommend you give the third game a try, as it is actually a very enjoyable game. The jump in quality between these games is astonishing, and it's so clear that the developer poured everything they had into it, and that's something I can totally appreciate. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me, or do you think that this series was actually complete perfection the entire way through? Let me know in the comments below. In my SCP Endurance video, I asked you guys who your favorite SCP was and why. My favorite comment was this one by Maincrack. They said SCP-001, and I agree. Honestly, one of the coolest SCPs ever designed, and of course, an absolute classic. Banshee was easily one of, if not the scariest Five Nights at Freddy's game I had ever played. Amazing atmosphere, wonderful sound design, and even pretty damn good game mechanics to go along with it. I've of course covered it on this channel before, and if you haven't already, you should go give that video a watch after this one. The game we'll be covering today reminds me of Banshee in a lot of ways, easily being another one of the most horrifying FNAF experiences I've ever had. However, with all of the good does come some bad, and while I feel there's nothing super bad about the game we're covering today, I do feel like there are a few things that we need to talk about with some very good tips for future game devs. The game we'll be covering today is Midnight at Star Stage, one of the newest FNAF fan games on the market with a lot of hype behind it. Today, we'll be diving into the game, talking about its story, gameplay mechanics, pros, and cons. So strap in with me as we peek behind the curtains of Midnight at Star Stage. Jumping right into night one, wasting no time, there's something super obvious I want to get out of the way immediately. This game looks and feels exactly like the FNAF fan game Banshee, like I've already mentioned, and I can't lie, I love it. Absolutely, it's amazing. Banshee's atmosphere was one of the best out of any FNAF fan game I've ever played, and I feel like this game really lives up to that exact feeling. This game is horrifying. To our left and right, we have doors. However, both doors are completely different. The door on our left can only be used for as long as we're holding the switch. However, the door on the right is toggleable, which I actually don't think I've ever seen another FNAF game do. Sure, the original FNAF technically has toggleable doors, but they can't be toggled forever due to the fact that you have power. But there's no power in this game, so I just thought that this was interesting. Of course, we have our cameras, however, there is no camera map. Instead, we have to cycle through the cameras using W and S, which I thought was a little bit weird for controls, but that's not super important at all. This night introduces two threats, so let's talk about them and how terrifying they are. Let's start with the main character, Rocky, one of the most aggressive characters in the entire game. His goal is to get to your office, no shit, but his way of doing so is incredibly intense. Just like Foxy, he will sprint Mach 104 directly at your office, and the scariest part, he can attack either side. The way you'll be able to tell which side he's going to attack is based on which cameras he goes through. If he goes to camera 3, that likely means he will attack your left door. If he goes to camera 6, that likely means he will attack your right. Oh fuck! Now, when he gets to your door, all you have to do is close it. However, like I said, he is incredibly fast. And when he runs to your door, well, yes, he does make a noticeable sound cue. Just take a look at this clip and see how fast he really is. I don't know, dude, there's no fucking sound cue. What? Yeah, he is very fast. And this game is about to be both really fucking hard and really fucking scary at the same time. Strap in, guys, it's about to get crazy. Anyways, moving on to the next threat we have to talk about, that being Rash the Cat. Rash the Cat really goes to show how difficult this game is going to be, and that mainly comes in the form of how much synergy he has with Rocky. Just like Rocky, Rash too can attack both of your doors. However, he is completely silent. Very reminiscent of Springtrap from Banshee, he will creep up silently to either of your doors and stare at you. All you have to do to make him go away is stare back. Oh my fuck! It's a costume! Why is it moving? We're about to be in for an absolutely wild ride, guys. These characters are terrifying, some of the scariest I've ever seen, right up there alongside Banshee. I think it's pretty clear this game drew a lot of inspiration from Banshee, and I think that's great. They nailed the atmosphere, they nailed the character designs, and they even nailed the pressure that Banshee brought, and we're only in night 1. The synergy Rash has with Rocky is mainly with your right door. Since it's toggleable, the thing you'd want to do is keep it closed, since the reaction time you need for Rocky is scary fast. However, since Rash is so quiet and makes no sound cues, it leads to you needing to keep that door open so you can constantly check for him. It's a small detail, but definitely one worth talking about. This game doesn't have a task-based completion system like Banshee, instead having the usual time-based one, which I want to be clear I don't think is an issue. Sure, I love it when games try something new, but there's nothing wrong with sticking to the usual. I'm super excited to see what the rest of this game has to offer, so without further ado, let's move on to night 2. Psych! I lied. First, we have to talk about night 1's post-night minigame, and why I don't give a fuck about it. In it, we have to collect a bunch of bullshit scattered around the building. Boring! I'd rather jump into a glitching wall and get teleported next to a ninja by a campfire. Thank you very much. After teleporting, we touch the fire, and the minigame abruptly ends. Now we can move on to night 2. Night 2 really goes to show how this game is eventually going to have to be played out, as it adds one of the most annoying threats in this entire game. That being Bowie. Bowie acts as this game's eye slut. That's right, I'm coining a new FNAF term, and I expect it to be used very frequently by everyone in the fandom from now on. Eye slut refers to a character archetype that revolves around said character needing to be stared at, and that's the only fucking mechanic. And this game's eye slut is Bowie. Bowie will randomly move around cameras 3, 6, and 9. Some would even say, damn she fine. If you ever don't glance at Bowie for long enough, he'll appear at your door where no matter what you do, even if you close it, he'll still close the gap between his willy and your butt and start clapping your shit like a crowd after a good performance wanting an encore. The real issue with Bowie isn't even Bowie himself. It's more so due to the fact that it makes Rocky so much scarier. Whereas before, all you really needed to do was watch him so you could tell which side he was going to attack, while Bowie is active, you should be staring at him the entire time. So this leads to you needing to be able to react to Rocky every single time. So if your reflexes are shit, you will be shit at this night and the entire game as a whole. But overall, this night isn't too bad. Now we can move on to the post-night 2 minigame, which is much the same as the first. This time around, we actually play as a different night guard, which is interesting. And this time we're tasked with taking some animatronics to the stage. Boring! I'd rather jump into a glitching wall and get teleported next to a ninja by a campfire. Thank you very much. After teleporting, we touch the fire and the minigame abruptly ends. And now we can move on to night 3. Actually, I lied a bit. I just thought it'd be kind of funny to repeat the ending of the last section since you do the same thing. What I want to talk about is that for some reason during this minigame, the monkey we first see is in the 2D style like everything else. But if you do some exploring, you'll find the other characters, except they'll be in the normal 3D rendered states, which is honestly just super uncanny and creepy. It's cool, it's random, it's unimportant, but I wanted to mention it. Are you guys ready for night 3? I really don't think you are. Like, really ask yourself the question, am I ready to learn about the third night of this game? Dexter's asking me to think about it, so that clearly means I'm about to learn about the most soul-degrading thing of all time. Did you ask yourself the question? Great, let's move on to night 3. Night 3 introduces a certain type of mechanic, a very common mechanic in FNAF games. Almost every single FNAF game has at least one of these, actually. And fun fact, this very mechanic was what spawned the most recent Dexter White song, Nintendo No. Go listen to it. It's on all streaming services, by the way. Is that enough of a hint as to what type of mechanic is slid into my butthole on this night? Well, if it's not, let me help you a bit. This night introduces a fucking monkey. I don't even want to do it the due diligence of saying its stupid fucking name. It's a piece of shit. In fact, it's the same monkey we put on stage in the last minigame. Monkey Dick has his own stage, and thankfully he's nothing like Bowie, who requires me to stare at him all night. However, he does something arguably worse. Occasionally, at random throughout the night, he will slam his cymbals together. And now, I want you to take a solid guess as to what it is we have to do after hearing these cymbals. Really think about it. What could this so far amazing game do to just really shoot itself in the foot like a soldier trying to get an honorable discharge? I think I've given you enough time to think about it. After Monkey Fuck smashes his cymbals together, he will teleport to a random fucking camera. God damn it, fuck me right in my rear. This night also introduces the ability to flash your cameras. So all you have to do is find the rape ass monkey and flash him to make him go back to his stage. I quite literally have no idea what makes these games unable to come up with something unique. Don't get me wrong, I think this game is fucking amazing, and this find them on the camera mechanic is nowhere near as terribly integrated as some of the other FNAF games I've played, but please, guys, stop doing this. My poor little heart just can't take it anymore. But aside from that, that's all this night adds. Now we can move on to the post-night minigame. In it, we're driving a car right after a beer. We can choose to hit some deer on the road, but the game would really prefer we didn't. Fuck the actual point of the minigame. We all know that there will be a glitch somewhere. And sure enough, at a certain distance, you will see a glitch. Bam down and you'll be teleported to the fire with the ninja. Touch the fire and the minigame comes to a close. I have no idea what this fire could be symbolizing. And yes, by the way, I know that this is most likely not a ninja, but I'm noticing while writing this that in my playthrough, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, I actually never found the glitch in the first minigame. So now I'm dreading having to replay the whole game later. But that's Future Me's problem. And I don't give two fucks about Future Me. For now, let's move on to night 4. Damn, we're already on to night 4, huh? Shit, we're just busting through this game all willy-nilly style. Well, there's a new thread introduced on this night, and it's honestly, like, not even a problem at all. Something I'm noticing about this game is that while yes, it's very scary and that's awesome, the game is also, like, piss easy, which don't get me wrong, I don't want it to be the hardest thing on earth, but it's like, you know, a little bit too easy. Anyways, moving on to the threat this night introduces, Floppy. Yes, I'm serious. Get it out of your system. I know it's a completely ridiculous name, but that's his name, and we love him just the way he is. And the way he is basically just a fucking statue. Floppy sits directly outside of your right door, and his mechanic is cool at a glance. Floppy is a weeping angel and will only move when your door is closed and you can't see him. So he directly synergizes with both Rocky and Rash. However, if you've seen my playthrough over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, then you'd know that the need to have this door closed at all times isn't really present, as you need the door open at all times to see if Rash is there. So keeping it closed at all times is actually just a pretty bad idea. And it's not even like Floppy moves at an insanely fast rate, because he really doesn't. So for most of the game, it'll be like he's just a fucking decoration. It looks scary and that's cool, but generally speaking, he doesn't really add anything to the gameplay loop, which I do think is very disappointing. I've thought for a bit on how you can make him more interesting without changing his mechanic at all, and I think I have two decent ideas. The first being the one I would personally go with. Really make him a weeping angel and force you to look at him, not just have the door open. This would make him much more threatening, albeit the most annoying thing on earth. The only other way you could make Floppy more threatening is somehow designing a way to make closing his door more needed. Because quite literally, the only time you ever need to close the door is the 2 seconds it takes to make Rocky go away. And that's even if he attacks that side in the first place, which of course isn't always guaranteed. But realistically, the best way to solve this problem is to not even have the problem in the first place and just make Floppy do something else. There's plenty of mechanic ideas that devs could take from the other brilliant fan games that exist. Here's a quick tip for FNAF devs. If a character you add doesn't feel like a new threat you have to actively think about, either don't add that character or find a new mechanic for them. Anyways, after completing the night, we of course get a post-night minigame. In it, we play as a sad fat kid. I actually can't confirm if this kid is sad, but I know that if I was fat, I would probably be sad, so I'm just assuming this kid is the same way. In this minigame, all we have to do is walk from one side of town to the other while avoiding cars on the road that are, for some reason, not stopping for the literal roadblock of a child directly in front of them. At 2 points during this minigame, you can see what appear to be a pair of eyes watching us, but I have no idea what this is actually supposed to mean, and I also don't know what the story of this game could be literally at all. Now, for the glitch, which this time around is completely unobvious. If you get all the way to the end of the map, what you're supposed to do is just touch the edge and you'll be booted to the menu. This is what I did on my playthrough, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black. There's blood leaking out of me, knowing that I'll have to go back and fix this, but whatever. If instead of touching the edge, you instead go all the fucking way back, really getting Tubby his exercise, and touch the edge next to where you started, which by the way shows no indication of being glitched, so this is just bullshit, then you will be teleported to the fire with the ninja, touch the fire, and we can move on to night 5. Night 5 introduces one new threat, and I'm honestly surprised that it does. Very uncommonly do I find FNAF games that consistently add a new threat with every night, and I honestly really appreciate this game for doing so. Albeit, both this threat and last night's threat are pretty lackluster. But before we talk about the threat this night introduces, we need to talk about this night's phone call. Because even though it's by far the shortest one, it easily is the most interesting we've heard so far. The phone guy just tells us that tonight will be our last shift, because the floppy suit almost killed the employee who was inside of it. So that's just based in Riz, I can't even lie. Anyways, on to talking about the threat that this night introduces. That being the fucking mouse that the game didn't tell me the name of, so that's just awesome. Mickey Mouse fuck-ass boy adds a mechanic that honestly might as well not even exist. I struggle to figure out whether I think the mouse's mechanic or Floppy's mechanic is more worthless to the gameplay loop. Dicky Mouse will randomly appear on whichever camera you're looking at. When he does, you won't be able to switch between cameras. To make him go away, all you have to do is flash the camera. So just press space and he goes away. That's literally it. He can only appear on the camera you're looking at. so it's not like you're ever going to miss him either. And he's also very forgiving with the amount of time you have to flash him. So really, if you die to this guy, you're just retarded or dead at your keyboard. I really wish I had more to talk about with these mechanics. Sure, I could sit here and complain and bitch and whine and say the mechanics make me want to do something to my penis that will damage it beyond recognition. But I mean, really, just look at the gameplay between night 3 and 5. Tell me if you see much of a difference. Spoiler alert, you won't. In fact, let's actually play a game real quick. Right here, I'm showing you 2 clips from my playthrough, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black. One of them is footage from night 3, and the other is footage of night 5. I want you to take a guess at which video is which. I'll give you a bit. Did you make your guess? Well, fuck you, because both of these clips are night 5. That's how similar they are. So while yes, it's cool that this game is adding more animatronics, I just really wish they'd do something that mattered to the gameplay loop, but they just don't. Anyways, after completing night 5, we don't get a minigame in the same way we usually do. Instead, we get a cutscene. A child is talking to his father. At some point, the child leaves and the father spots one of the mascots and goes to talk to it. Upon interacting with the fucking mouse, we get jump scared and he asks the dad if he needs anything, and the dad says no. So like, why the fuck did you even go up and talk to him in the first place? Either way, with that, night 5 comes to an end. Night 6 is not what I expected at all. Discover it for yourself. Now you see, I don't like that you're saying it like that. What do you mean discover it for myself? Easily being the most interesting night throughout the game, albeit still incredibly easy. Night 6 is a boss fight night with this fucking thing. What the fuck is that? Whoa! What the fuck? The fuck was that? Tell me that wasn't the coolest and most terrifying thing you've ever seen in your life. So yeah, this is the final boss of the game. Do I have a reason as to why it looks like this or what lore significance it has? Literally fucking no. Not at all. But who cares, because he looks fucking sick. The way he works is incredibly easy. He can attack both doors. He works pretty much entirely off sound cues. He will be moaning throughout the entire night, which I will add is very gross, but I guess that's just what he's into, so I'm not gonna kink shame the poor guy. Whenever he moans, that tells you that he's moved. If you ever see him at your left door, all you have to do is hold the door closed. He will begin banging on it, so just make sure you hold it closed until he stops. If it wasn't obvious, all of the other characters aren't activated on this night, so you don't really have to worry. Now, when he attacks your right door, you'll have to do something just a little bit different. You still have to close the door, but for some reason, he really doesn't like it when your computer is on while he's on the right side. Very weird, but we'll listen. So when you see him on the right side, all we have to do is close the door and then turn our computer off and he'll go away. Now, we have to talk about how you actually beat this night, since it's not just as easy as holding off until 6 a.m. like the rest of the nights have been. This is a boss fight night, and this time you're actually fighting a boss. When he moans, it's much more likely for him to just switch cameras than it is for him to appear at your door. He is a find them on the camera character. However, he's the only character in the night, so it's not a big deal. You will have to constantly track him on the cameras and spam your camera flash on him to deal damage. Flashing makes your system crash, so get ready to deal with rebooting your cameras constantly. Deal enough damage on the cameras and this final night will come to a close. However, depending on if you were able to collect all of the fires next to the ninjas in the minigame will determine which ending you get after completing this night. After winning, the creature will force his way into your office like Graveyard Shift at Freddy's and kill you, wherein you get the bad ending. But who cares about the bad ending? The interesting ending comes in the form of collecting all of the fires from the minigames. Now, I'm not kidding about this. I promise. After you beat the night, the creature still kills you. However, the fire slowly rises from the bottom of the screen, and you're spit into a fucking Undertale boss fight with the creature. What the fuck am I playing right now? I'm dead serious. This is not edited. This actually happens in the game. You have to dodge a plethora of attacks, and every once in a while, you'll get the chance to attack. Attack 4 times and it'll fucking die, rewarding us with the good ending, which by the way, is no different from the bad ending. There's no extra story revealed or a cutscene, it's just a boss fight and then an end screen. There's only one other thing I wanted to talk about, and that's a weird minigame you can find hidden in the extras menu. In it, you play as this weird white statue thing. The only thing you can do is find a newspaper clipping on the floor talking about some missing children. That's literally it. I have no idea why this is here. I have no idea what missing children had to do with this game. I failed to pick up on pretty much any lore this game has thrown out, if there was any at all. But for all of you little theorists, have fun with that information. But with that, that's all Midnight at Star Stage has to offer. Overall, I think this game was terrifying. However, I feel like this game was heavily inspired by Banshee. And it was. It almost feels like the dev wanted to make Banshee, but didn't actually fully think about the mechanics of how the game would work. Don't get me wrong, this game looks amazing and it plays well, but the synergies with characters really just aren't there. And I have no idea what the fuck the Undertale boss fight was about, but it was pretty cool. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me, or do you think Midnight at Star Stage is actually just like Banshee and is almost more perfect in some ways? Let me know in the comments below. In my Five Nights at Marcus video, I asked you guys what you think is the worst FNAF series ever made. And my favorite answer was everybody who said Jolly, because I think it's pretty obvious that I heavily agree with that statement. The Five Nights at Freddy's formula. Arguably what defines a FNAF game in the genre of a FNAF game. You're stuck in a small space, you can't move, and several threats are trying to eliminate you as you use a small amount of tools to defend yourself for an arbitrary amount of time. This, in a nutshell, is Five Nights at Freddy's as a genre. However, there are some Five Nights at Freddy's fan games that don't follow this formula, and if it wasn't for the use of the characters from the original game, you would have no idea that they were even FNAF games to begin with. And maybe you can think of a few games like this. The game I'll be covering today is another one of those games, a game so unique, so good, that if it didn't use official FNAF characters, it could easily be its own fantastic survival horror experience. So sit back, strap in, and join me today as we cover Fredbear and Friends Reboot. You can honestly think about Fredbear and Friends Reboot as more of an Outlast, Resident Evil, or Poppy Playtime style game, purely in terms of how it plays. It's a story-based, free-roam survival horror game, except it uses characters and settings from the Five Nights at Freddy's universe, and it's honestly super cool. We play as a guy named Thomas. When this game takes place, the Fredbear and Friends restaurant had been closed for over 26 years, and together with our friends Chris, Ashley, and Richard, they all decided it'd be a great idea to do some urban exploring in the now abandoned building, not knowing that they were about to walk into a sick and sadistic death trap, the likes of which they'd never experienced before. We drive to the restaurant where all of our friends are waiting and head inside to find them. We all talk about what the plan is, and it seems like they don't even fucking have one. So like, why are we even here? No matter, we decide to all split up like Scooby and the gang to explore faster, something I would never agree to do because this building is so dark I can barely see 10 feet in front of me. So, to solve the darkness problem, Richard finds the power room as we enter the office of the building. Successfully turning the power on, I ask the question, is it even possible for a building 26 years abandoned to even be able to have power? That's a genuine question, by the way. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but like, who's paying that bill? The city? I have no idea. After having our fun in the office, we meet back up with our bald friend Chris. I know being bald isn't a crucial plot point, but a plot point I found relevant to point out. Like, imagine being bald. Couldn't be me. I have luscious locks. Bald bitch, loser bitch, boy, loser bitch. Chris tells us he wants to continue exploring to find out more about this place, which I call bullshit on because this bald loser is sitting down and is actually not exploring a damn thing. Heading back to the office, we find 2 documents for Chris since he's too lazy to go look for himself. One of the documents mentions the animatronics acting up, and the other talks about an armed man in a purple suit. I wonder who that could possibly be. We go back to where Chris was, only to find him missing. After exploring around, we realize we can't find Richard or Ashley either. We hear a voice in the distance yelling to get away, and later hear what sounds like Richard getting attacked.
What the fuck?
We decide to say fuck our friends and run to the exit, only to find that the door is somehow locked. We decide we need to go hide in the office since there's a door we can close to keep ourselves safe. As we run down the hallway, we run into Chris. Relieved, we go to greet him, only to watch him get snatched from something hiding in the vent on the ceiling, pulling him up into the ceiling and tearing him apart. Yeah, not this way though, not fucking that way, no we ain't. We obviously turn around and go to the other entrance of the office since I'm not about to get ganked like Chris just did. As we go to the other hallway, we can hear loud metallic footsteps following behind us. We quickly hide under the desk and hope that whatever is following us is retarded. We watch as a crooked spring Bonnie limps through the office, unaware of our location. We come back up only to hear a ring of the phone on the desk. We answer the phone to be greeted by some douchebag using voice mod like those guys that go on Valorant to flirt with any female over the age of 10.
If you want to survive, listen very closely.
He tells us how to survive each of the 8 animatronics. The fucking 8 goddamn cock-sucking animatronics. My god, that is a lot. I'm not going to explain every single animatronic at the same time right now because that would be boring as fuck. And trust me, this phone call was also boring as fuck. The big thing that we're told is that Fredbear is scary, and he's the reason why one of the doors to the office is broken. So fantastic, we have a door that doesn't work. What exactly are we supposed to do? I have no idea. I have no direction whatsoever aside from let's go see if I can break the exit door down. But before we can try anything, we're forced to listen to a cutscene while there are 8 hungry robots whose mouths begin to water whenever they smell my gooch. During this cutscene, we're put into the perspective of a mechanic named Simon. We're told that we have to go into the Fredbear's building to fix some of the robots because the customers reported them to be acting aggressive. So we can gauge that this cutscene obviously takes place before the shutdown. After this cutscene, we're actually put into the perspective of this mechanic as we head inside the building to solve the problem at 5 in the morning because as an engineer, we're on call all the time, yet still get paid like dog shit and are still expected to just wake up and travel at any time, even for the smallest of reasons that could 100% wait until my fucking shift starts. But alright, let's go I guess. As we enter the building, we notice the animatronics are on for some reason, and they shouldn't be at night. We figure somebody just forgot to shut them off, so we go to the employees' room to flip the switch to power them off to take a look at them. After grabbing the key from the office and heading inside, we find that the power lever for the robots is actually already off, yet for some reason, the characters are still on. We decide to just manually shut them off to work on them instead. So we walk to the stage, reach up to turn off Spring Freddy, only to get that Soulja Boy cranked on us and get knocked the fuck out by a guy who I can only assume to be the guy we heard on the phone. We come back to playing as Thomas again, and are tasked with obviously finding a way to get the exit door unlocked. We find a key to the bathroom on the office shelf and head down the hall to go inside. Inside of the bathroom, we find a hammer that we hope we can use to break the lock on the exit door. However, as we exit the bathroom, we see the non-attractive, fat-ass version of Chica heading in our direction, so we quickly jump inside of one of the stalls to hide. We hold our breath as Chica passes by and quickly run out to the exit door. We break the handle to the door and open it, seeing the final exit door. We don't get far before Foxy jumps out at us for some fucking reason. This door was locked? Why the hell was Foxy on the other side of it? Oh well, what the fuck ever. It's a little bit more important right now that we run away from the murder robot behind us. We run back to the employee room and hide behind a shelf. Foxy walks inside, but before he can find us, he hears a noise coming from the door inside of the room. Opening it, he finds who I can only assume to be Richard and jumps him like he's in Detroit. We take this chance to book it back to the exit. As we run, we hear Richard getting torn apart, screaming. We get to the door just in time, and Jesus fucking Christ, the door is gone? What the fuck? Let's ignore the fact that this doesn't make sense, because I don't think I need to explain to you why a door disappearing doesn't make sense. We turn around to see a certain large twitching bear. He just screams in our face and disappears, clearly being a hallucination. We figure there's no better time than the present to find another exit. As we walk into the main party room, so does Spring Bonnie. And now's the time where I can talk about how he works. Spring Bonnie is as basic as it gets when it comes to a survival horror character. He patrols around the building, and if you get too close to him in his line of sight, he'll start chasing you, and he won't stop chasing you until he kills you. And there's also no chance you're going to outrun him. The only way to get him to stop chasing you without dying is to lure him to the side of the office with a door and close it. But you also really have to be careful with how you close this door, because it doesn't work how any normal FNAF door would. It only stays closed for about 2 seconds, so make sure you time this properly. Nope. Oh! I closed it! I fucking closed it! I fucking closed it! I fucking closed it! I'm dead. I'm dead as shit. If you do, Spring Bonnie should be teleported to a different room in the building. We maneuver our way around Spring Bonnie and eventually make it to the other exit of the building, only to find that the door is missing too. Isn't life just so awesome sometimes? It's at this moment we hear Richard scream, which confuses me because I thought Richard just got killed by Foxy. So if who we heard just now was Richard, then who did Foxy just kill? It couldn't have been Chris because we saw Chris get killed by the fucker in the vents. It also couldn't be Ashley because it was 100% the scream of a man. And it can't be the engineer because he entered the building in that cutscene 26 or more years ago. This is not important at all, so let's actually continue talking about what's happening, shall we? We head back to the office where we heard the scream, only to find nobody there. We figure for some reason we should go back to the employee room. Why? Ask Shitlips Thomas, because I can't figure out a good reason to go back there, but apparently he's the FNAF expert and not me. Before we can continue, we get another engineer cutscene. We're dragged into a back room and we overhear 2 people talking. Well, really only one person talking, because the other guy has his voice changer on so deep thinking it'll make the e-girls wet, so I really can't even hear him.
Why didn't you just kill him? Really? Dave, you know exactly what happened before.
The voice I can hear sounds suspiciously like the guy on the phone who called us here at 5 in the fucking morning. He tells voice changer guy that he should just kill us so we don't get away like the other engineer and spread the word about what they're doing. After not doing it, the phone guy decides to just do it himself, so he enters the room and stabs us to death. Fantastic. I really shouldn't have lived in Chicago. Everyone in Chicago gets stabbed. Going back to the employee room, we find the corpse of a police officer. Seeing that his radio had been taken, we now know that whoever is behind this really knows what they're doing. But we figure that because a police officer went missing, that other officers will be arriving at some point to look for him. So knowing all we have to do is survive, this game's most agonizing survival section finally begins. And I get to explain what all of the characters do in grueling detail, because they're all laid on us at the exact same time, and we're just supposed to remember what they all do from the 2-minute phone call we got 15 minutes ago. Hooray. Alright, well, the goal is easy. Just survive until 6 AM without getting found by any of the animatronics. Sounds simple enough. All we have to do is track all of their movements and learn their patterns, and then find a spot in the massive 3D environment where none of the characters ever have a line of sight to, right? Almost, but not really, because one main character. Bonnie. Bonnie is this game's way of preventing you from doing exactly that. On certain time intervals, Bonnie will emerge from the room where the puppet is. Yes, by the way, the puppet is in this game. Don't think too much about it. There are a lot of characters from a lot of different FNAF time periods in this game, so just shut up. Anyways, Bonnie will exit this room and make his way to the employee room to turn the puppet control lever on. Once it's on, the puppet will begin moving on a track across the ceiling that leads to a door which has some chains on it. Why are there chains on this door? Well, it's to hold back and stop the big bastard himself, Fredbear. If the puppet makes it all the way to this door, it will break it down and allow Fredbear to come out. And spoiler alert, Fredbear always knows where you are, and if he gets out, you will 100% die. because as mentioned earlier, he doesn't care about the doors and he is faster than you are. So, all you have to do to prevent this from happening is go into the employee room and turn off the puppet control lever whenever Bonnie turns it on. This leads to you needing to be moving around pretty consistently throughout this night. Why do that when you could just hide right outside of this room or maybe even inside of it? Well, that's where Spring Bonnie comes back in. Spring Bonnie, and in fact every character during this section, has a very specific movement pattern that they will walk in, and thank God they do, because memorizing these patterns is the only reason I ever completed this section. Spring Bonnie has the habit of walking into literally every single room in the building, and his line of sight is really large, so you will have to always maneuver around him. Also, if that wasn't awesome enough, with every hour that passes during this section, each animatronic will become more and more agile, which really just means their line of sight increases. Chica is the next character I want to quickly mention, and she is pretty boring as a character. She's just Spring Bonnie, except her path doesn't cover as much ground as his does. Her line of sight also appears to be a lot smaller than his, so that's good news, I suppose. She does go through the main party room a bit during her cycle, and that will become important later when I go over my amazing strategy. Let's cover Freddy next, as he will probably cause you the least amount of issues out of every character in this game. Freddy will randomly spawn in random rooms, typically next to the doorways. All you have to do is not walk directly into him. He won't chase you, but if you get too close, he'll instantly kill you. So really just make sure you're watching where you're going. Mangle isn't that terrible either. Side note, I know its name in the game isn't actually Mangle, but fuck you. It looks just like her, and it crawls through the fucking vents like Mangle, so I'm calling it Mangle. Mangle is also the one that killed Chris in that cutscene earlier too, by the way. Mangle is also incredibly easy to deal with. On the floors and ceilings of certain rooms, there will be large vents. Occasionally, you may notice wires coming out from those vents. That means that Mangle is waiting there, and if you walk by, she'll snatch you up. So once again, just like Freddy, open your eyes and you'll be just fine. Foxy is the only real problem during this night, as he's a random character with no pathing, and is also super easy to forget about. Foxy has the chance to be hiding behind any doorway at any time. The only way to tell if he's there is by standing next to the doorway and listening for quiet breathing. For some reason, you can't just move to one side of the door and check if he's standing there, since you literally can't see him even if he is there, which is something I died to in my playthrough, and you can see that over on my second channel, Dxtr Black. That's really all of the problems to worry about during this night, but Bonnie is obviously the most dangerous. So, how should you go about pulling this off? Well, when this game first came out, there was a super awesome glitch you could use to cheese this entire section. If you remember where we hid from Foxy during a cutscene, you used to be able to hide in the exact same spot, and both Bonnie and Spring Bonnie, aka the only characters that enter the employee room, wouldn't be able to see you hiding there. And since it's in the employee room, it was right next to the puppet control switch, so you could beat the entire section just by standing in one spot. Unfortunately for me, I didn't get the luxury of being able to do that, as in the newer version of this game, during this section only, an invisible wall is placed there to block your path. So I had to play the legitimate way. This is when I started to develop my strategy. I'm gonna be so real with you, it took me about 45 minutes to complete this section. I am complete ass at these types of games, which is why I never play them. I personally really dislike the mechanic of every enemy is patrolling randomly and will chase you when seen, but you also have a bunch of bullshit to do at the same time. I know it's a common mechanic, but it's just never something I was able to get into. Mainly because I don't take being chased very well at all, so it just kind of gives me a lot of anxiety. Here's how this section can be beaten 100% of the time for anyone who struggles with things like this, like I do. I came up with this myself. I'm super proud of myself. I did no walkthrough because I'm the best. The first step is to run out of the employee room as fast as you can and get to the far corner of the main party room to the left of the main stage. You have to be fast because Spring Bonnie will enter this room quickly after. While in this corner, both Spring Bonnie and Bonnie will never be able to see you, which is huge since this location also gives you an easy view of both of them since they enter through the door on your left. Once in this corner, Spring Bonnie will soon pass by. After a while, Bonnie will enter the room. Bonnie is slow as shit, so this will take a while. but once you see him, you can start following him. Bonnie doesn't care so much about killing you as he does flipping the puppet switch, so you can actually get pretty close behind him. Creep, 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 creep. That's the sound I make. Creep, creep, creep. You gotta match your steps with his, bro. Boom, 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 boom. All good. But obviously, if you get too close, he'll still kill you. Once Bonnie leaves the main party room to enter the hallway, Spring Bonnie should be up near the office, so you don't have to worry about him. Take the time it takes for Bonnie to enter the employee room and flip the switch to stand by the doorway to listen for Foxy. Once Bonnie flips the switch, quickly enter the employee room and turn it off. After Bonnie flips the switch, he will exit the room through a door you can't even open, so you don't have to worry about him turning around. After flipping the switch, you want to run back to the main party room. At this point, Chica should be inside. She will walk around the tables and exit the room through the door that both Bonnies enter through. Simply be slow and follow her. Once she leaves the room, go back into the far left corner again. This is now going to begin the second cycle. This time, since the paths that Bonnie and Spring Bonnie take are much different in length, they will be a lot closer together. Bonnie will enter the room first this time, with Spring Bonnie directly behind him. Once Spring Bonnie goes up and around the tables, you can start slowly following Bonnie. At this point, you'll have to be patient, since Spring Bonnie will enter the entrance room, then travel back into the party room, and then go into the hall to the employee room. Then we'll travel to the office. So you will hear Bonnie flip the switch, and you will have to wait probably 30 to 45 seconds before you can switch it back, because if you're too fast, Spring Bonnie will see you. If you sneak past him while he's in the entrance room, it appears that Foxy will always be behind the door to the hallway and you will die. So it's your best bet to just wait for Spring Bonnie to finish this cycle and start walking to the office. I recommend waiting directly in front of the stage during this section since he won't be able to see you. Once he goes down the hall, quickly run into the employee room and flip the switch. Then quickly run back into the party room and go right into the exit doorway. Chica will be entering the party room at this point, and if you're any closer to the stage, she will see you. Once she walks around the tables, once again, you can follow her out and go back to the hiding spot in the far left corner. Now, the third cycle gets a little bit scary, so be ready. Bonnie will soon enter the room again, with Spring Bonnie fairly close behind. However, there is enough room between Bonnie and Spring Bonnie for you to be able to get in between them. Closely follow behind Bonnie and Spring Bonnie will enter the party room. Continue to follow Bonnie into the employee room and shut the switch off immediately after Bonnie turns it on. Immediately run back to the entrance of the party room. At this point, Spring Bonnie should be walking into the exit room. You can take this small window of time to run to the front of the stage. Spring Bonnie will enter the hallway, and once he does, you're safe to go back to the exit doorway. Since Spring Bonnie is near the office, you don't need to go back to the corner. In fact, you actually shouldn't, because Chica will follow behind Bonnie. Bonnie will once again pass you, and you can once again follow him into the employee room and shut the switch. After flipping this switch, this final time, you're home free. Simply sit in the employee room and this nightmare of a section will come to an end. And the best part is, since the movement of almost all of the characters is scripted, you'll be able to use this method to beat this section of the game every single time without fail. I hope you enjoyed this overtly long explanation section. It's easily what took me the longest to do while playing this game, so I figured I should devote a long time in the script talking about it. Let me know what you think. After beating this section, we get a cutscene where we're running down the hallway, being chased by Spring Bonnie. We get into the office and close the door on him, which literally cuts the fucker in half. I love this. This is peak. Absolute cinema. As we turn around, Foxy charges at us, but luckily, the animatronic power gets shut off and Foxy shuts down right in front of us. Walking down the broken doors hallway, we see a deactivated Freddy, and Chica tries to kill us, only to get powered off at the same time, which actually scared me in my playthrough, which you can find on my second channel, Dxtr Black. We continue to explore the now eerily quiet building. Going back to the exit, we fall to our knees, only for a door to appear in front of us, locked by a code. A voice comes over the intercoms that sounds weirdly like the guy that killed the engineer in a previous cutscene. He tells us that he's impressed by our work and that the animatronics we faced thus far will be deactivated for the remainder of our stay, aside from 2, who he calls his favorites. It's now up to us to figure out the code. We find a piece of paper on the wall that says "Find me." Not totally sure what the hell that means. We wander around into the puppet room where we find writing on the wall saying "It's me." Next to this message, we find another piece of paper saying "My back is to the corner." After reading this note, the 2 threats of this section activate: Fredbear and Mangle. Again, Mangle acts a bit differently, so let's talk about her first. This time, she's no longer in the vents. She's walking around the building. If she sees you, she'll roar like a dinosaur. And if you don't get out of her line of sight in 4 seconds, she'll start chasing you. And she won't stop until she catches you. So just like, run, I guess, bozo. Fredbear, on the other hand, should be scary. But because of an item we got at the beginning of this segment, he really isn't. At the start of this section, we're given a taser. Fredbear will always know where you are and will constantly be crip walking towards you. Except, Fredbear while walking is very slow, so you can easily stay away from him. Every once in a while, he will also roar for some reason, and will then begin to charge at you. While he's charging, he will be faster than you, but when he gets close, use your taser to stun him and he'll go back to walking. So avoiding the threats on this segment is honestly a cakewalk compared to what we had to deal with during the last section. Now, I had a stroke trying to figure out what "my back is to the corner" meant. What you have to do is find Freddy, since his back is to the corner of the wall. Except not really, because his back is just to the wall, not really the corner. Regardless, on his back is another note stating camera 2. I've neglected to mention the cameras thus far, but that's because they're literally completely useless for the most part. Throughout the building, there are several monitor stands where you can place your monitor, because I guess you can't just hold a fucking iPad with your hands. You instead need a holder like a toddler who blares annoying ass YouTube videos while in a public restaurant, and the parents just find nothing wrong with that since they'd rather have the internet raise them instead of them. Anyways, when you place the monitor down, you can look at the cameras. Big whoop. Using your eyes is better in a game like this because you can walk around freely. Regardless, looking at camera 2 now, we find another message saying "I'm here." Going to the location of camera 2, you'll find another note saying "Look up." On the ceiling, you'll find the number 7 and yet another note reading "Inside my head." What this means, if you weren't a genius like me, is that you have to go to Foxy in the office and look in his mouth. Inside, you'll find the number 3 and another note reading "Behind a curtain." Now, there are 3 curtains in this building, and you have to look at each of them in a specific order, which is dumb because all you're doing is looking behind them. Behind the last curtain, you'll see the number 7, and then some text reading "The safest place" will start flashing on your screen. Let's pause. I really don't understand why it wasn't just another note. This is supposed to be like an escape room set up by the guy that locked us in here. How the fuck was he able to make us hallucinate a phrase? I don't know. Let's move on. The safest place refers to the office. Going back to the office, we find another note reading "the second digit." Obviously, the second digit is the number 3, as it's the second digit we found on this little scavenger hunt. Finally, going back to the exit door, we can type in the code 6373. Fun fact, by the way, you can actually just type in this code at the start of this section if you don't want to go through all the bullshit I just explained, because there's no check here to see if you have or not. But after punching in the code, the door disappears. Opening another door that it was covering leads to another room with no fucking door. Falling to our knees again, all of a sudden the door reappears for some reason, and a bunch of police officers barge in past us, and we're taken out of the building to safety. After being rescued, we're shown a cutscene where Thomas is either being interviewed by police or is in a therapy session. I can't quite tell which one is correct. He freaks out about his friends being killed and then realizes he never heard anything from Ashley. No screams, no body found, nothing. This makes him tweak like when I'm in line at the grocery store and some 40-year-old mom pulls out her own grocery bags to save the environment. You want to know what I do when I see someone using their own bags in the grocery store? When it's my turn in line, I tell the beggar, hey, all my shit, double bag it. Anyways, after this cutscene, we're thrown into the credits. But that's not where this game comes to an end. We actually get a post-credit scene like it's a Marvel movie, where Thomas is in his room. He wakes up in the middle of the night and looks out his window, only to see the silhouette of an animatronic we never saw in the pizzeria staring back at him. And finally, Fredbear and Friends reboot comes to a close. Overall, I think this game was a super enjoyable experience. Did I get overtly frustrated and almost give up while playing the survival section? Yes, but I beat it, and I'm glad I did. The story to this game is simple and nice. There's no retarded digging that we have to do to learn the simplest things like a fucking name of a character, Scott, asshole. We're instead just given a story the way it should be given. A few mysteries here and there, but nothing so overtly frustrating that it makes it not fun to figure out. The game looks gorgeous, it plays well when you understand what you're doing, and overall I would highly recommend you give it a go. Obviously, from the teaser we saw at the end of the game, a second game was clearly in the works. But with no updates for several years, and it being confirmed that at some point the game's development was put on halt, and given the fact that this game came out 7 years ago, I don't think it's very likely we'll see Chapter 2 anytime soon. But hey, only time will tell. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me, or do you think this game was actually doo-doo ass rank? Let me know in the comments below. In my next Week at Freddy's video, I asked you guys what FNAF game you guys thought doesn't get enough recognition, and my favorite answer is this one by Seal Bonk. They said the Dormitibus remake, and I agree. I think that title has been dragged through the mud for obvious reasons, and I don't think a lot of people know that a remake even came out. Definitely go check it out if you haven't. Recently, I've been covering a lot of very well-known fan games on this channel. Five Nights at Candy's, Pop Goes, and Animatronic Memories are probably names you're all familiar with. Recently, I've been looking for a FNAF game to cover that I personally had never heard of, and today I've definitely found one. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's super weird, but however, it does have its charm and an amazing story. So, let's waste no time and hop right into Tales of the Bunnyman. Tales of the Bunnyman opens with a cutscene that reminds me a lot of the old official Five Nights at Freddy's trailers, specifically Five Nights at Freddy's 2. We get several shots of the pizzeria interlaced with pieces of dialogue explaining the exposition of the story. We play as a man named Vincent Baldwin, who we later learn used to be a night guard and is one of the missing children's fathers, the father of Cassidy. We're entering the building to do some investigating and find out where our missing child went. And with our motive in mind, we're safe to head into Night 1 and start talking about what this game really has to offer. Night 1 introduces two characters, but before I start talking about them, I want to talk about the office itself. In our office, the first thing I want to get out of the way is this picture. I don't know who this is. I checked the wiki and couldn't figure out who this is. That's it. I just don't know who this is. Anyways, on to something actually important. The coolest thing I noticed about this office is that there are actually two rooms that we can move between, the typical office room and the boiler room. I'll talk more about the boiler room later when it becomes important. The door to the boiler room can be held shut, as animatronics will actually have to travel through it in order to get to your office. The only other things in our office is our camera system and a giant gift box. We can hide inside of this gift box to be able to protect ourselves from the first major threat of this night, Foxy. Foxy behaves pretty much exactly the same as in Five Nights at Freddy's 1. He starts on Pirate's Cove and makes his way through some phases before attacking. However, something unique about Foxy is he actually has two completely different attacks he can perform, each of which requires you to do something completely different to counteract him. The first attack he has is pretty simple. After he leaves Pirate's Cove, he will charge towards your office. When he does, you'll have to quickly jump inside the present until you hear him run away, after which you can jump back out and continue. His other attack is unfortunately a mechanic I've grown to dislike more and more as I play FNAF games. After leaving Pirate's Cove, Foxy has a chance to appear randomly on one of your cameras. When he does, all you have to do is find him and stare at him until he goes back to Pirate's Cove. This is mainly a me thing, but I've personally grown tired of the find them on the cameras mechanic. Yes, I do play Five Nights at Freddy's for a living, so yes, I'm going to see repeated mechanics a lot. Most sane people don't play as much Five Nights at Freddy's as I do, so most people won't find this mechanic to be that big of a deal, but hey, at least it's not a stupid fucking music box mechanic. We'll talk about that later. The only other threat introduced on this night is Bonnie. Bonnie is incredibly simple in how he works, as is typical in most FNAF games that feature him. Bonnie will make his way through the building and to your office. Afterwards, you'll be able to hear him at your door. You'll need to quickly go up to the door and hold it shut until you hear him leave, like Five Nights at Freddy's 4. When you do, you'll know it's safe to reopen the door and continue the night. Very basic. That's just how we like Bonnie, isn't it, guys? Right? You like it when Bonnie's basic, right? You wouldn't want Bonnie to just hot bottom right into your office and start fingering you, would you? Freak. And with that, we can move on to the post-night 1 minigame. Here's where we get to talking a lot about how cool this game really is. This game does narrative storytelling in a different way than any other FNAF game I've ever seen. Instead of an 8-bit minigame or a slideshow lore dump, Tales of the Bunnyman turns into a visual novel during the post-night sections, having you play in the perspective of a different character each night. I think this is actually super cool. While yes, you may think that it looks straight out of a My Hero Academia DeviantArt fan page, it is very clear that an amazing amount of care and effort went into these post-night sections, and that cannot go unnoticed. Before I really start talking about the lore of this game, I need to make it incredibly clear that there was so much poured into this story. There's so many details that I could point out that would make this video quite literally take hours to complete. And while I'd love to be able to talk about all of it, I don't have the confidence in myself to do so, and to be able to portray it in the way that it rightfully deserves. I'll be going over what happens in the story, but I won't be diving into every single minute detail, and I apologize if you were hoping that I would. Anyways, in this minigame, we play in the perspective of Jeremy Jr. Fitzgerald. After hanging out with his friends at Freddy Fazbear's, he notices that his mom has not yet come to pick him up. After waiting an extended period of time, he decides to just watch the performance on stage. Hearing a strange whistling coming from backstage, he enters to investigate, only to abruptly get abducted and murdered by the Bunny Man, going on to possess Bonnie. I honestly think that these post-night minigames are a breath of fresh air in this genre. I've never seen anything like it before, and I'd love to see more FNAF games try to do something new like this to tell their story. But now it's time for us to move on to Night 2. Night 2 only introduces one new threat, that being Chica. Chica does exactly what you'd expect her to do, and no, I don't mean eating until she pops like a balloon. What I really mean is moving through the cameras and then going to your office. Oh my fucking god, that is gross. Yuck. Fucking yuck, bro. She does go through one additional camera compared to Bonnie, making you see her less often than him, but other than that, she's exactly the same as Bonnie. I'll also use this night to talk about the only thing I dislike about this game. The mouse. Oh my god, this mouse is atrocious. Oh no, this mouse is really bad. If you're at all familiar with my channel, you'll already know that the way the mouse works is always something I'll have a problem with when fan games try to switch it up. In most FNAF games, when you move your mouse to the side of the screen will scroll in that direction until it hits the end of your office. That makes sense, and this is good. Tales of the Bunnyman instead decided to take a route similar to Sister Location. If you are to move your mouse to one side of the screen in Tales of the Bunnyman, your mouse won't follow the moving office. Instead, the game will keep track of its simulated X and Y positions in the office. And while this may sound super cool, in practice, it leads to you having to move your mouse all the way across your desk or increasing your mouse's sensitivity to be able to make up for it. Is this nitpicky? Yes. But I am giving my opinion on a game, so I think it's important to talk about things that I notice, especially when it's the main interaction mechanic in the entire game. Anyways, moving on to the post-Night 2 minigame, where we play in the perspective of Susie Sutherland. The group of friends were supposed to play the newly installed arcade game Pop Goes versus the Machinist? 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 Mechanist? Machinist? I don't know. Instead, she decides to split up from the group to go look for Bonnie. Walking around the building, we can talk to a kid named Ollie, who mentions something about Bonnie acting weird recently. Given the timeline of the events this game has, I'm fairly certain that this cutscene is taking place 16 days after Jeremy's disappearance. So I think it's safe to say that Jeremy at this point in time is already inside of the Bonnie costume. During this minigame is when Susie can also find a VHS tape relating to Edwin Murray. If you couldn't already tell, this game's story is heavily entwined with the official FNAF games. Later, Susie heads over to Pirate's Cove to get a peek at Foxy, getting startled by William inside of the Spring Bonnie suit. It's at this point I need to mention two things. One, why is this specific camera in the post-nights a 3D render instead of the usual 2D drawing? And two, why is William the only character in the entire game to have voice acting? Mr. Afton, don't scare me like that.
Now, what's a missy like you doing snooping around a pirate's property?
Why is he voice acted? I'm much more curious about my second question. I was a little caught off guard when I first heard him speak, since, again, nobody in the game thus far ever has. But regardless, that's not very important. After a brief, uncomfortable conversation with Afton, we meet up with our friends again at the new arcade machine, and as we play the game, we're seen being stalked by the Bunny Man. If you couldn't already guess, Susie Sutherland goes on to possess Chica. Now it's time to talk about Night 3, which introduces one new threat, Freddy and the Marionette. Now, pause. Let's just stop for a moment and talk about Freddy first, okay? Freddy, like Foxy, has two different attacks. We'll talk about the more simple one first. Freddy will make his way through the cameras and enter your boiler room. The reason he does so is to attempt to cut the power, because doing so will allow for the Marionette to come spread your buns and lick up your crack. To prevent this from happening, we will have to enter the boiler room and hold our flashlight on his face, causing him to bug out and leave the boiler room. However, before he does, we actually get to see him creepily tilt his body. Such a small detail, but I actually really like it. Now we can talk about the other mechanic Freddy has that I originally thought was going to make me want to skin an elephant. As previously mentioned, it's clear that Freddy wants to assist in helping the Marionette grope us. So, Freddy's other attack is him going to the music box to fuck up the Marionette's sleep schedule. Fun fact, I used to work a graveyard shift at a news station, and let me tell you, you don't want to fuck with nobody's sleep schedule, bro. So, in order to save the Marionette's sanity, we must remotely shut down the music box before Freddy can finish. Moving on to the Night 3 post-night minigame, we play in the perspective of Fritz Smith II. Let me tell you, this guy is a big fan of Foxy. So much so that he insists on constantly talking like a pirate, something that made me want to eat my own lungs throughout my playthrough because I was writhing in cringe. A.S. the worst one. It be fixin' to be jolly. What the fuck does that mean? Fritz leaves the group to go look for Foxy. Going to Pirate's Cove, he finds a decommissioned Foxy behind the curtains. Additionally, he finds a diary written by Henry. I guess for some reason, this is where Henry goes to vent, right next to the fucked up looking robot. A little weird, Henry, but you do you, boo. Inside of the diary, we read that Henry is struggling to cope with the loss of his daughter and his theory about Jeremy and Susie's disappearances having something to do with each other. Little did he know how right he truly was. Whilst continuing to read the diary, the Bunny Man appears behind him and drags him into the back room, all while taunting him, saying that he thought he was more interested in Foxy than Henry's diary. Fritz would go on to possess Foxy. Moving on to Night 4, we get to talk about a very odd threat, Balloon Boy. Yes, for some reason, Balloon Boy is in this game. Don't question it. I guess the developer of this game just hates fun. Balloon Boy isn't a very difficult threat to deal with, thankfully, instead serving more of an annoyance, which is very fitting for his character. Balloon Boy can only appear in 2 rooms in the entire game, the boiler room and your backstage camera. you'll have to listen out for a vent sound cue. When you hear it, you'll have to travel to the back room and find where Balloon Boy is, because unlike Freddy, he has multiple different locations that he can stand in. Once you find Balloon Boy, just like Freddy, all you have to do is hold your flashlight on him until he goes away. I'm really not entirely sure why Balloon Boy exists in this game. I have yet to find any story reason for it either. Maybe it's just a popular character to put into the game, or maybe I'm just reading way too much into this. I'm not really sure, but hey, let's move on to the post-night 4 minigame. In this minigame, we play as Gabriel Collins. Gabriel sneaks into Freddy Fazbear's Pizza because he has a hunch that his missing friends are still inside. Once he enters, he searches the location, eventually discovering the marionette. They quickly become friends and begin exploring the establishment together. Eventually, they stumble across Michael and William Afton. William is trying to convince Michael to work as a performer, playing the character of Bonnie. But before we can hear anything else, William spots us. He chases us through the building, and the marionette hides us in its gift box. However, unfortunately for Gabriel, William finds him anyway and is knocked out. He wakes up inside of the Freddy Fazbear costume, watching William Afton jump around the dining room, mocking him through his last breaths. Gabriel would then go on to possess Freddy. This is easily one of the most fucked up cutscenes throughout the entire game. I'm no edgelord as some people seem to think I am, but I really enjoy when games show us the depraved things that the villains do. I and many others don't want to just hear about things happening, we want to see them as well. Of course, I don't think we all want to literally see the children getting murdered, but I think showing off the situations in the way that Tales of the Bunnyman does is incredibly interesting. Next, we get to move on to Night 5, the final main night in Tales of the Bunnyman. This night adds Fredbear, an interesting but fitting final character choice. Fredbear acts as an everything character, being able to take on the role of every animatronic besides Balloon Boy and Foxy. However, unlike most everything nights that take place in other FNAF games, Fredbear is active alongside each other animatronic, adding one more layer of stress to the nights. Again, he doesn't have any unique mechanics by himself, but this time I'm honestly okay with that, only because the other characters are still active. It's at this point I want to bring up something I should have brought up a long time ago: the character designs. From what I've seen, the community seems to be pretty split on their opinions of these character designs. A lot of people love them and think that in combination with the grungy environment, it makes them look very creepy. However, on the other hand, I've seen plenty of people who think that the designs look unprofessional and seemingly come out of a game that came out many years ago. I personally have no problems with the character designs. I think they look creepy and uncomfortable. However, I do think that the texturing on the characters does look a bit odd, but nothing that I feel takes away from the immersion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Also, since I'm being a little meta right now, go subscribe to my new channel, Dxtr Gray. I cover non-FNAF horror games over there, and we have a lot of fun. Anyways, moving on to the final post-night minigame where we play in the perspective of Cassandra Baldwin, or better known, Cassidy. Now, noticing that she's the only member of her friend group that hasn't gone missing, she vows to figure out what happened to them and find where they all disappeared to. Entering the back room, she finds a Fredbear plushie which, throughout the game, has been shown to be able to teleport on its own, and yet, for some reason, nobody felt like that was weird at all. This is really the only gripe I have with this story, the plushie teleporting around, and multiple people know about this, yet nobody is at all a little concerned about it. On top of that, it is literally never once elaborated on or explained why this happens. I can't even draw a conclusion because there's quite literally no reason, but let's try to put that behind us for a moment and continue. We do know that the plushie is being used by Afton to lure Cassidy into the back room. Now, pause. I know I just said there's literally no reason given as to why it's teleporting, and you may be questioning why I said that even though I just stated that William was using it to lure Cassidy. However, that still doesn't explain how it was fucking teleporting, and still doesn't explain why nobody gave that a second thought. Anyways, Cassidy is successfully lured into the back room. Scared, Cassidy runs out of the pizzeria and later returns for a Halloween party. I know that's not what that says, I'm sorry. As she explores, she's found by the bunny man who presumably knocks her out after stating, "You forgot me." She awakens to find herself inside of the Fredbear costume. William explains that originally he planned to save the Fredbear costume for Henry, but decided to use it for Cassidy instead. During their conversation, it's revealed that Vincent, the character that we've been playing as in the night sections, according to William, is a terrible night guard, which would technically leave him responsible for not noticing the children's disappearances on the camera, since every action that William had been taking was done under the constant surveillance of those cameras, including what's happening right now in front of us. This would give us a perfect reason as to why he's returning to the restaurant now to find his daughter, because he didn't watch her like he was supposed to. He never saw what happened. Afterwards, we get one last cutscene. Vincent walks up to the Fredbear animatronic and realizes it's his daughter. However, he trips and falls, which leads to him getting killed by his own daughter, and Tales of the Bunny Man abruptly comes to a close. Almost. There's actually one more thing to talk about, that being Night 6, or as this game calls it, the epilogue. In it, after completing the final challenge, which is just a harder version of Night 5, we see the line, "He finally found the suit that will become his tomb, the last lingering piece of his soul. A good song never dies." With that, we get to watch William's spring lock failure and onlook as he bleeds out. We're shown that Vincent, our character, was found dead inside of Freddy Fazbear's, and several news outlets labeled him as the reason the kids were murdered. I can't lie to you guys, I'm really eager to talk about this story, since after reading into it, I actually think it's really good, and it's clear that a bunch of effort was put into it. But like I said previously, I'm just not confident in my abilities to do it for myself. I've tossed around the idea of just reading the highly detailed explanation on the wiki that was written by somebody that was far more talented than I am, but I've decided against doing that since I don't want to come off as lazy and uninspired. And as much as I hate saying this, I'd highly recommend you go to the wiki and read up on it. It's actually such an amazingly well-written story, and I think it might just be one of the best takes on the official FNAF story I've ever seen. Overall, I think Tales of the Bunny Man is an enjoyable experience. The post-night minigames are interesting, and the story is fantastic and told in a way that isn't overtly confusing like most FNAF games like to be. However, I do think that the actual gameplay mechanics are pretty lackluster. Not only does each character not really have synergy with one another, this game is also just too easy. Throughout the nights, it never really feels like the characters are becoming more aggressive, which tends to lead to boring nights where you're just waiting for the much more enjoyable minigame sections. But what do you think? Do you agree with me, or do you think Tales of the Bunny Man is the most well-balanced FNAF game experience? Let me know in the comments below. In my Showman's Awakening video, I asked you guys what your favorite mechanic from a Five Nights at Freddy's game was. My favorite answer was this one by RoanQ8V. They said the turning off the light mechanic, specifically from Tyke & Sons Lumber Co. I think Tyke & Sons did that mechanic really well too, so it's cool to see someone else mentioning it. Subscribe to the channel, I'd appreciate it a lot. I've been Dexter, and I'll see you all in the next video. See ya!